This month, it's all about routines. I've gotten into the routine of talking about routines this month. It is very routine-orific. So why don't we get somebody else? Let's get somebody else to talk about it. And I say, what better way to learn about routines than to bring into someone with ADHD who has successfully taken their podcast to the top of the charts. You already know who it is because you looked at the title. But if you did not look at the title, well, the mystery is about to be revealed. You are listening to ADHD Big Brother, the podcast for adults struggling with their ADHD and their depression and anxiety and bleh. I'm your host, Russ Jones. I'm an ADHD coach, and I run the Platinum Award-winning community coaching of the same name, ADHD Big Brother. And I also have ADHD and depression. It's craptastic. Welcome aboard. Let's learn some stuff, laugh at some stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, here's some stuff. Welcome to the podcast. How you guys doing on this fine February day? I'm having a kick-ass time this month. I got to say, I'm really enjoying this month. You guys know I'm all about adults with ADHD getting shit done. If that's your jam, then, I got the peanut butter, baby. We just got to find ourselves a couple slices of bread. Then we got ourselves a sandwich. But my mental health report for the month is so far so good. Having a good go of it, Having a good go of it. One of the best ways I believe to get shit done is to learn from those that have done the thing. And I got an awesome opportunity to talk to one of the greatest ADHD podcasters out there. If you search your podcast platform for ADHD, you will see my guest's podcast at the top of the list. Perhaps you've heard of it, Hacking Your ADHD with William Curb. Perhaps you've seen that show up in your search. I'm a big fan of his podcast. Hacking Your ADHD is just awesome. If you happen to be unfamiliar with William Curb, allow me to read from the bio here. William Curb, born in Oahu, Hawaii, graduated with a BA in English from the University of Puget Sound in 2008. He now resides in Washington State. Hello, Washington. I grew up there. He's a non-binary individual with a loving wife and 2 children. William's career path has been diverse. From real estate to managing a professional frisbee team. Yeah, we're talking about that. His true passion lies in podcasting, where he now advocates for ADHD awareness on his podcast, Hacking Your ADHD, launched in 2019, where he offers actionable advice and fosters a supportive community for those with ADHD, aiming to dispel misconceptions and empower individuals. And he does a goddamn brilliant job of it. I'm a big fan, and I got to talk to him. So let's just dive into our conversation. William and Russ shooting the shit about routines, the podcast, frisbee golf, picker-upper grabby toys, and more. Let's listen in now. Well, your journey to the beginning of your podcast is, I think, interesting to a lot of us because you have the number one podcast on ADHD. But apparently you're the hot shit on ADHD. But
and I don't say that to try and sound cocky. That is occasionally I'll look at numbers and be like, oh, that's weird.
I'm number one.
Yeah.
But I was reading your bio before here and well, first of all, I'm curious how you got started, but what happened with the managing a professional frisbee team? What goes into hanging up your hat on that? And then
the league went under. So that's what happened, is that there was no more league. I mean, there is a different league now, but I am not part of that league.
Wow. How was that time? That sounds like literally the funnest freaking job ever.
It was, I enjoyed it a lot, but it is kind of what drove me to understanding that I need to manage my ADHD, because it brought out some of the worst ADHD habits with me, where I'd be like, I'm going to work till 1 a.m. and I'm going to do all these things where I'm doing these projects that aren't getting finished, but they really need to get finished. And I'm like, oh, well, then I'm going to start answering these emails, and I'm going to be putting together things at, middle of the night. And it's where I had to learn work balance. And then after that, I was like, well, I still want to do frisbee stuff. So I started going, I'm going to do a frisbee podcast. And then during the frisbee podcast, when I didn't have a boss, I was like, oh, my ADHD is what's really holding me back.
Wow. You were diagnosed before this, during the frisbee. So then during the podcast, you got to managing it, or at what point do you pivot and change course?
diagnosed after college, 2012 maybe. So a while after college, I guess. Don't remember when the league started. Don't remember when it ended. But I during the league I was like being nuts with that kind of stuff. Then went to do my own podcast. During that I was like I was like in the beginning it was pretty good, but then I was struggling to make content and do things, and
Mhm.
texting with a friend being like, man, I want to do this stuff, but I'm just too lazy. And then kind of like trail off. I'm like, it's not lazy. It's probably just my ADHD. And then we're like, oh, wait, what? I can do something about that if that's what I think it is. And so then that text led me to like looking at the our ADHD subreddit and going watching a ton of how to ADHD from Jessica McCabe and being like, oh, there is so much more I can do that I just never considered, because when I went through my diagnosis, I don't remember if they offered to do any of this kind of stuff, but I didn't do anything for my ADHD management beyond medication when I first got diagnosed.
Mhm.
And while medication helps, it does not teach you how to deal with your ADHD.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So yeah, so it was just like that like pivot of like, oh, this is something I can do something about. That was that move to doing things. And so then after doing some coaching and really getting into it, I was like, well, I really liked doing that podcast other than being really bad at it. But now I know all those things that I'm bad at and can do work on those. Maybe I can do this ADHD podcast, and kind of just went
Yeah.
from there with that.
Awesome. And then you skyrocket to the top.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a lot of uh, that I had the lucky break of there being a pandemic and
The
having a
lucky
lot of people
break
want.
of the pandemic. You're welcome.
Yeah,
Go. Thanks, COVID.
yeah. But I mean, really, like having launched my podcast right before then, I had enough episodes
Mhm.
that when the pandemic hit and people were looking for content about ADHD, it was just like, oh, this is their short episodes. I want to do this. This guy has a back catalog already. I'm going to listen to a bunch of these. I'm going to listen to a bunch of times. And that just became a big driver. It's like it was right place at the right time, even though the right place at the right time was a really awful time.
Yeah, it was an awful time. It all the smiles went away from my life. Like all that the when everyone like wore masks and nobody made eye contact anymore. Oh God.
No.
Talk about depression, like
Yeah.
sinking into a darkness, man. That was a really bad time.
Yeah. And it was, like having to be like, oh, I'm going to have to figure out uh, how to, while it was great for the download numbers, I was like, then I'm now doing this at home. I have kids at home full time. And,
Mhm.
so there was a lot of episodes that were like, hey, how am I going to manage this? This is not going well.
Oh, in your episodes, would you talk your way through your current circumstance? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'd either directly talk about what I was dealing with, or be like, come up with my episode topic based on what I wanted to work on, and
Yeah.
then be like, okay, this is like, I'm like having trouble with figuring out a to-do list or my daily planning or something, and then write that episode. And then people would be like, and because was writing it at it and coming at it from an angle of this is what I'm trying to deal with right now and how I'm thinking through this process, and here's what's working and what's not. That was, I think, a lot. People was like were able to really resonate with that, because it was like I wasn't coming at it from like perspective of like I'm an expert telling you how to do things. I was like, this is hard stuff.
It is, yeah. I love that aspect, and that's one of the things I really love about your show. And it is the options, and then also the summary at the end
Yeah,
is genius, dude. That is phenomenal. Thank you very much. Um,
I mean, it's great because my podcast is like an amalgamation of a bunch of other podcasts I listen to. Where I was
mhm.
like, oh, I remember hearing the podcast that had like some top tips at the end. I'm going to definitely do that. I'm going to make the episode short, like this other podcast I really like, and I'm going to a number of features where I was like, oh, if I just take all these pieces of podcasts I like and put it in together, I'm like, oh, I'm going to
Yeah.
do the thing where at the beginning of the show, this is the introduction. This is what the show's about. Here's what are the topics I'm going to cover. That way you know what's going in, and then do the same thing at the end. This is what I just told you.
That's great. I love it. It's and how I typically will do my podcast is usually what's hot for me in the moment.
Mhm.
So similarly, like either what am I struggling with, or what do I just have a really strong opinion about in the moment because I've talked to somebody or I've dealt with a thing. That usually kind of informs what I'm going to do. I'm theming my months this year. I'm trying something new. And so this month, like January was all about big goals, how is putting them together, how do we do it as ADHDers? And then this month, I really wanted to focus on routines. It's what we need, but it's also a curse word, but it's also something great. I know from my own experience with ADHD, structure it's what is needed. And the more you have it, the more non-structured time you can get, at least in my world. And routines is similar to that. So I'm curious, like what your take is on routines. And there has to have been something that you've put together for you to have a successful podcast. And I'm kind of pointing at a specific aspect of your life too, is you don't go from, I'm going to do a podcast to having 6 years worth. I think we're at 6 years with you. Or close to.
This will be my 6th year. Yeah.
Yeah. There has to be a routine in there somewhere, some kind of old reliable. So I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like one of the first things for starting an episode is just having a template created where I'm like, I do like, there's the steps I go through where I'm like, I'm doing the like coming up with the idea, doing this pre-writing stage where I'm just gathering ideas, writing down thoughts, and then taking that, throwing that in, like being like, okay, that's crap. Now let's make this, polish this, and make this something that's listenable to. Sometimes I'll then do like, okay, now my new thing, also awful. Let's do that again. And having the steps. So like when I use Notion to organize a lot of my stuff now. I'd previously done it in Evernote, but I like the format of Notion a little bit better. And I just click buttons, like have the little database of the episodes, and I click a button, new episode, and it pops up 3 pages of pre-write, script, and intro outro. The intro outro has like kind of the things written out. I I have spelling errors in my template, which is actually kind of helpful sometimes when I need to like be like, well, I need something to fix. Okay, I'm doing stuff now.
I'll tinker around there for a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm like, I have a assistant I work with now, assistant producer, and he's like, should we fix these? And I'm like, nah, it's not. I'm not going to read the words wrong there. I don't even really look at them. It's the red squigglies actually help me here. If I'm stuck and I can't write, I just need to start doing something, and then being like, oh, I'm just going to fix this typo and this one and do that. And since it's not like important stuff, it gets me, builds a little bit of momentum.
Okay.
And so I do find, and then it's a great way to help fight perfectionism is having purposeful errors, especially because they're purposeful errors that no one else ever sees. So that's kind of like the routine there. Is like, I've just built that, like, this is when I write, this is when, these are the steps I go through to make this happen. And that kind of routine.
So it's not necessarily, this is Monday at 8 a.m. This is just, in terms of your process has an order to it.
Yeah. And then also I have to be like, since I have an editor now, I have to send my files to my editor by a certain time so that it can get to be edited so I can upload it before the posting date. So it gives me this buffer of like, I need to have this done by this time. There were times when I didn't have an editor that there are days I put up episodes that went up on Monday that I finished editing at like 8 a.m. on Monday. I was like, this is past when I should have this done, but this is what's going.
Here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can relate to that.
And so there is like some aspects like, okay, I need to be writing these this time. I need to be doing this. I don't have it specifically in my calendar, but I know like this is when this needs to happen for these next steps to happen. And that kind of helps build that routine.
Gotcha.
And then also have this forced routine on me just from the fact that I have kids. Where I'm like, they have to go to school, so I have to get up, get them ready, and then depending on, it's like, oh, This one has choir practice, and this one wants to take the bus today, and this, then after school activities and all that. So that like
Mm-hmm.
creates this like scaffolding for the rest of my day that I build my schedule around. I'm like, as much as I love my podcast, the kids are the most important things,
Mm-hmm.
and so I have to have that. That's always the priority, and so building from there and being like, okay, now I know because of what I learned from doing the league, I do not work when it's family time. Like I don't look at email, I don't do any of that stuff
Awesome. You have
when my
hard
kids are
battery?
home. Partially just because would get frustrated if like I'm like I don't like getting interrupted, and kids this was pandemic problem being like, okay, I need to find time to work when they're not doing other things. And
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like I'm like I can't be the parent I want to be if I'm trying to work while the kids are around, so I just don't. So yeah, so then I have this like, okay, then that means there are from when they leave for school till they get home, that's time that I'm allowed to work and time that I can do all the other things I need to do in life, laundry, grocery shopping,
Oh
and
God, all
stuff.
of that. All the
Um,
nightmare stuff.
yeah. And
Um,
so I'm like, okay, I have to build in when do these things happen? And I really like having that scaffolding that's kind of forced upon me. I'm like, what am I going to do when my kids graduate and I have my time all to myself? Like, well, maybe I will have baked enough as an adult that I can figure it out. We'll see. I'm still cooking.
you're still in the oven. Well,
Yeah.
so like some of these, I know this isn't going to be necessarily a routine question, more of a structure schedules question, but your kids go to school. Now you're in the pocket of you can do work or you can do house stuff or what you can do stuff. How do you get on during that time? Do you schedule stuff or do you wing it?
Um, Both. I prefer to schedule things because as much as I can, especially with like, so I'm doing podcast stuff, I doing interviews. This has to be on
Mhm.
my calendar because otherwise I will not be there. So I do schedule as much stuff on my calendar stuff. I will been sick for the last couple of weeks, so I have not been doing my daily schedule. I like saw it over there. I'm like, that is old. That's for January schedule. That's not February. So, um, but yeah, I try to write down like because of time blindness, we have this like false sense of how much we can get done during a day.
Yeah.
And so if
Oh
I
my
like
God.
time block out and put in times of when I'm going to do things, it's like, okay, well then that kind of gets, I'm like, oh, I can't, write for 4 hours and record an hour podcast and do laundry and do dishes and go work out for a while. And I'm like, oh, I've scheduled,
Hmm.
I want to do 12 hours worth of things. And it wouldn't even like I said, write for 4 hours. That would never happen. I would never be able to have my brain work like that.
But it made a nice little rectangle, right, in your
Yeah.
in your calendar. Like there's a rectangle, there's a rectangle. Look at all these time blocks.
Yeah. Yeah. But so I do time block and then I can see this is when stuff will fit in. And
Hmm.
also trying to build accountability around those things, being like either
Mm.
do, group accountability or do something like, some focus 101 or groove or whatever kind of thing where it's like one-on-one.
Oh, the body double deals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I'm mad about how effective doing that kind of accountability is because it feels like
Yeah.
I'm like, really? I have to go jump on a Zoom call and I'm going to do work.
Oh,
I'll just
dude.
sit here and do it. And then I'm like, an hour later, like, I did not do anything. And I know if I had gone on, I would have done
Yeah.
stuff. And I get on and I do it. And I'm like, why is this
Yeah.
working?
I'll preach that
Brain.
all day long. That's what we do in our community. It's like
Yeah.
the body doubling is literally such a game changer for us. And it also I was late to the game on body doubling. I had a chip on my shoulder about it. I don't want to need anybody to
Mhm.
have to sit there. But I don't man, it's genius.
Yeah. I still have the chip on my shoulder, but I use it because I know it's effective. I'm just like, I'm mad about it. I'm like, brain, just do what I tell you.
Yeah.
Sit down and concentrate. And it's like, no, you're not
Yeah.
in charge of me. And I'm like, if you're not in charge of you and I'm not in charge of you, who's driving this boat?
Well, okay. To circle back to routines
Yeah.
here, that I also have an issue, the same issue with routines in terms of I know that they're helpful for me, especially when I'm doing them, and yet there is such an inner tantrum that happens when I try to add something. Like right now, I've added. I'll just share mine real quick, and then I want to see where you're at with your stuff. But like in the morning, I was snoozing I'd wake up at 6, snooze for an hour, and then I have to get up to take Alistair to school. Right, I have to make him breakfast and take him to school. That whole parenting thing, right?
Yeah.
And it is a deadline, and it is great, wonderful. But there's stuff I want to do. I wasn't doing it. So for me, the routine. I was starting to do baby routines, and I added, I'm going to wake up at 6:30, but I have to get out of bed. There's no snoozing allowed. So that's just one little baby step. But even that, I can feel my body like, just go back to bed. Do you have either like a morning routine or an evening routine that you like or that you would like? Or what is your life experience with that stuff?
I do a lot of like like I'll put my kids to bed,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll either do like some video games or
Mm-hmm.
watch some TV with my wife. Maybe with the occasional doing some other things in the evening, like going to a game night or something.
Mm-hmm.
But on like the regular nights, it would be just do a little bit of some light activity. I'm not trying to work then or anything. And then at 9:30 being like, this is my cutoff. I have to stop whatever I'm doing, go upstairs or take the dogs out, get them settled for the night, all tucked in, little jerks who woke me up at 5:30 this morning.
They don't deserve it, but you're doing it anyway because you love them.
Yeah. And then, but yeah, go up, take a shower. And because I have sensory issues and I can't go to sleep if I don't take a shower. It doesn't have to be a long one. It could be like 2 minutes, just like done. But has to happen. And then do some reading, either like some stretching and doing some fiction reading, and then
Wow,
right to bed and hopefully asleep by 10:30, 11.
dude, that's brilliant. I have a couple of questions about sensory issue in video games. First of all, what video game do you play? I think any person should be obligated to say what their video game is.
Yeah. I've been playing a lot of Mega Man recently.
Mega Man, Nintendo original.
They have all these like legacy collections on Steam now.
What?
So
Okay.
I've been doing that on the Steam Deck, and then also my friend and I are doing Enshrouded.
Okay,
It's like a crafting survival. So
that's awesome. Okay, cool.
Feels kind of like Breath of the Wild.
Oh wow. Okay, I'm kind of a dork for that stuff, so I'm always interested. What are you playing? The other thing is, I'm just personally fascinated by the sensory issue. What is it? It means like you can feel your body or the dirt on your body, or does it feel like?
Yeah,
because I know a ton of people are going to relate to this.
Yeah, I feel like I will get into bed. Like, so if I don't shower, I will get into bed and I will lie there and I will be so uncomfortable with feeling like sweat or dirt or just that I'm like, my brain's like, I have to go take a quick shower to just rinse that off. Then, I get in bed. I use a weighted blanket as well. That's another sensory thing, which I find is really great for giving my brain a little extra stimulation to go to sleep.
Okay.
Which can be a lot of people have like, oh, we should go down to zero stimulation for sleep, and that's not quite how our brains work. We need a little bit more with ADHD to get to sleep, and that can be helpful. Not
that's so
a lot
interesting.
more, just a tiny bit more, and then it helps us engage in relaxation.
Oh, that's super interesting.
It's like when we like are trying to talk and we're like, oh, I need a fidget and to hold, and it's like, oh, just having that extra little stimulation lets me focus on the conversation instead of.
I love how we're both playing with something with our
yeah. I have
so funny.
I always try to keep fidgets around for when I'm podcasting, because specifically quiet fidgets, because I'm like, oh, if I could get this thing, I'm like, oh, this thing's super loud, I cannot have that as a podcast fidget.
Yeah. That's how I have this. It's like this is actually my fidget right now. It's like a one day at a time coin. I don't know where I got it from. but it wasn't from actually a quick group, but I believe in that so heartedly. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing today? What is today about?
Yeah.
Um, that's
That little
so.
sneaky thing.
And you have if you
And
guys could see us now, we're
a
some
rock.
ADHDers. Do I have any? Oh, this is my other one. I got a mustache, but
Oh, nice.
this wouldn't work well for talking. Um, I lost my train of thought. I'm really fascinated by your nighttime routine. My girlfriend uses a weighted blanket, and I think those things are intense. They are so freaking heavy. Um,
Yeah.
I hear they're good for like anxiety type stuff. Now, is this a routine that you do without fail every night? Are you great at it? Or is that your ideal, but you are subject to the typical ADHD, like, oh, but normally I'm doom scrolling or normally this. Have you got
Oh
yours
yeah, I
locked
guess it's
in?
I forgot to I don't take my phone upstairs with me either. I plug that in downstairs.
Oh, that's genius.
Because I have other alarms upstairs so that I have a watch that I use for my alarm instead because uh I do not I do not trust myself with my phone. Even though I have almost everything taken off of it, I do not like I'm like I'll just be like, "Oh, it's time for bed. Well, time to read the Wikipedia about Mega Man," and then like oh, I wonder what this story with the character role is. Let's find out. I'm like, no, I don't need to do that before bed. And or, be like, before I had gotten social media off, it's like, yeah, I've never scrolled something on social media that has made me go, well, I'm glad I saw that before I went to sleep. And now I'm ready to
Yeah.
that's calmed me down and got me ready to go off to dreamland. It's like
Yeah.
that's not how social media works. Social media is a
Yeah.
engagement machine.
Yeah. It's meant to keep you going and
Yeah.
going. Yeah, for real. Okay, so
Um,
your nighttime is locked in. That's awesome. I'm working on mine. It's
yeah.
not quite locked in yet. But
And it
the
is interesting though, like when I have like say my wife is out of town, that routine is so much harder, even though I'm the one
oh,
that
interesting.
like when it's time to go to bed, I'm like, hey, let's head up soon. It's not like her like engaging it, but if she's like out of town, I'm like, well, my brain is like, well, we don't have to do that routine anymore because things are different.
Yeah, that's interesting. For me, sometimes everything goes to hell. I don't know if I mentioned this when we talked last time. I have depressive disorder. That's one of my diagnoses.
Mhm.
And everything goes to hell when I sink. So it would be like all routines are out the door. So I'm starting to, I'm coming out of my last one, but it was like now I'm starting to add routine type stuff into the mix. It doesn't sound fun talking about routines. What is the what's the shitty side of it for you?
Well, so I was thinking about this recently because I was having a conversation. I was doing talking to a meditation teacher, and they were asking me
Okay.
like, "Oh yeah, what have you done for meditation?" I was like, "Oh, I used to do all this stuff," and then I was like, and then I stopped because I changed my gym, and I used to meditate at my gym, and then
Yeah,
I just never started again because that change. And I was like, "Oh man, that's huh."
that's some
That
self-awareness right
it
there.
was
Yeah.
this like I'm like habit stacking is a great way to like get you to add habits and like build that routine, but it's this dark side is like, oh, when things change, if you're not really cognizant of like, oh, this is going to have this ripple effect on these other things. Cause I was like, oh, well, I'll just meditate at this other time. But it didn't like that didn't work as well. And so I just didn't
Yeah.
didn't put it back in. And
Oh man.
or like, yeah, my wife is out of town. Now things are different. And so now this routine fell apart, even though the only part of the routine that fell apart was me telling her that it was time for us to go to bed.
That's the only thing that changed.
Yeah.
That's so funny, dude.
Uh, because it's like, I'm like, she's always up to watch another episode of the thing. And I'm like, well, we should probably go to bed because, I mean, partially because I'm the one that gets up with the kids. And so I'm like, we should really go to bed because I have to get up with the kids. But it's one of those things where it's like, oh, small changes
Mm.
to the beginning of the routine can like throw off the rest of the routine. And so that's kind of like the dark part of it, where it's like, while I do love the routine, like, so another great
Yeah.
example is for a lot of people I'm sure deal with is they take their medication at a specific time in the morning,
Mm.
or even like coffee, and then something happens in the morning, and then they don't do that part. Like
Mhm.
I've been amazed where I'm like, I feel like I'm kind of the person that would be, coffee has to happen every day. But, uh, and most mornings I do have coffee, but if I can just forget that I was supposed to do that, and because, it's like, oh, this week we had a late start because of snow, and,
Okay.
yeah, I just didn't make coffee because we were doing different things in the morning. And then like later in the day, I'm like, man, I'm really tired. Oh, I never had coffee. Why didn't I have coffee?
Yeah,
Because,
man, I would do that with I got in this habit of every morning I have an omelet. I would make an omelet every morning, and that's when I would take my vitamins, take my blood pressure medicine, and if I didn't have an omelet, I would, like, if for some reason I was out of eggs or something, and I just had a banana or whatever, I would go the whole day and be like, oh shit, I forgot my blood pressure medicine because
mhm,
it wasn't attached to the omelet. The omelet was the anchor for everything.
yeah. So yeah, one way to really get around this though is to have good location-based reminders, because that's often how we need our reminders, are like through location. Like, okay, when I'm at the counter, I need this. When I get to the house, I need to do these things. So I think location-based are often good, uh, often better than time-based. So, which there are like some like phone apps you can do that will do location stuff. Like just like, I mean, even like the regular like Apple like reminder app, you can just be like, remind me to do this when I get home. Um, I wish it would do. What I
Wait,
would
and it
love the
knows
most,
when you're where you're at. It'll tell
yeah.
you,
Oh,
shut
our
up.
phones track us all the time. Uh, but
What? That I
um,
did not know.
oh yeah, it's great. Like I love like when I had an office, I'd be like, when remind me when I get to work to that I need to call so and so, and then like I wish it was a little bit more exact and I could put a delay on it, because I'd love it more to be like, remind me 10 minutes after I get to work to call so and so. Because it will be like I'm like parking and it's like, you need to call that person. I'm like, ugh. The way I got around it
Oh.
though would be like, remind me when I get to work that I need to create a reminder for 10 minutes to remind me to create a reminder.
Can't it, or like with the advent of AI and things like that, can't it do that? Or you'd be
Um,
like, I want you to do this when this happens.
yeah, it's you could probably do shortcuts for it now. When I was playing with it years ago, it was not a feature, but I bet you could probably figure out shortcuts to make that happen now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Rabbit hole. Here we
yeah,
go.
but yeah, the location-based reminders I think are great. But also just like, oh yeah, when like have physical reminders that are not going to become part of the background are great. Like sticky notes can be okay, but then like I've had this sticky note on my computer here for 3 weeks, and I have not done those things, even though they would not take long to do. Um, and
And
it's
they're
just like,
properly externalized in front of your face.
yeah, because I'm like, oh, yeah, sticky notes like that one that I have not done. Great, yeah, super. Uh, or I also like using reminders that are um, sticky in different ways. I have this app called Alarmed that has like a feature called Nag Me that will remind me to take my medication, and then unless I turn this alarm off, it'll like just play its little chime, because I don't want it to be super invasive, and then unless I like go into the app and turn the alarm off, it will remind me every 5 minutes. It'll like chime again 5 minutes later, until for that one I have it does like 6 times. But you could do it like for like important stuff to never stop. Just be like,
Wow.
every minute just keep going, or like every like at my garbage day, like every half hour, tell me to remind me to take out the garbage,
That's
until
awesome.
I for like 2 hours.
For 2 hours.
Well, it's every
I
half hour,
want you to
so
be the most annoying assistant ever
yeah.
and just keep tapping me on the shoulder. Hey, 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 you gotta go do a thing.
Well, it's because it's often like, because a lot of times when we get our reminders, we
Hmm.
can't do anything about them, and then we're
In the
like,
moment, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
or like, oh, I need to do this. And then it's like, well, I can't go and take the garbage out because I'm at John's house, but I'll be home in 2 hours, or like I'll be home in an hour, and so then it'll be like, oh yeah, okay, this is going to go off again in an hour, and so I'm like, okay, this is more useful that I can have like be
Big
like,
time.
this is going to not just remind me once, it's going to remind me at a more convenient time.
Yeah, and it doesn't give you an additional task where it's like
Yeah,
if it goes off your John's, then you would properly have to go, I'm at John's, I'm going to do a thing and set a new alarm. And if you were following the ADHD rules or whatever
yeah,
of being effective at dealing with your thing.
yeah. Although like sometimes dealing with stuff in the time is like such a hazard where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this at this time, and then be like, you have the like whole like cascade of events of like, oh, well, I looked at my phone and now I got reminded that I also have to send this email, and that,
Mm,
like I should do that right now because that's takes only, it only take me 30 seconds. And, an hour later, like, oh, I forgot I was at this party. And, that was not cool of me.
yeah.
Uh,
Would you have any kind of a thing for that you use when you're dealing with stuff like that? When you go, okay, or is it just a forgiveness thing, or like, hey, I'm going to be cool with myself. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I'm
maybe
in the
not.
wrong place, the wrong time, and that happened.
Yeah. A lot of times, I mean, well, so like, yeah, that's why I use this thing to be like, yeah, just keep reminding me. And also like, I can also just be like, when I do it, like just click a button that's like, delay the notification. Um, be
Hmm.
like, forget what it's called, but it's like, yeah, it's just a delay on the notification. I'm like, okay, just give me this again in half an hour.
Yeah.
Don't remind me now. And but yeah, a lot of like forgiveness things was just because it's a lot of time like, yeah, it in the big scheme of thing, it doesn't matter. If I
Hmm.
didn't get to something that at the moment I wanted it to, I don't want to make that the habit of not doing the thing, but I don't want to beat myself up over it either.
Hmm. Yep. Agreed. My experience with my own ADHD, with other people that I know with ADHD, we get to be very perfectionistic. We get to be very big with, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to wake up at 5. I'm going to meditate, and then I'm going to journal for 30 minutes. And then I'm going to drink water, do some exercise, and then I'll do some push-ups. And it's this huge, amazing, just
Mhm.
amazing morning routine that's unrealistic to go from 0 to that. But in general, like a morning routine, do you think that they are beneficial? Do you think it's a lot of too much hard work? What are your thoughts on that?
I personally don't have a lot of a morning routine right now, just because
Mhm.
um, I need to focus so much on what I'm doing with my kids. But
Mhm.
and it's just, if I want to get out the door, I have to.
You're like, I got to get out the door, and that is the a number one thing.
Yeah, well, because I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm going to get them out the door, and then I can do what I need to do for myself.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
I have the privilege of like working from home and being like having that time, and I can do that.
Yeah.
Um, but there are some benefits to a morning routine, but I do think we can. I was just talking to someone else about this. There's this like optimization trap where we try to
Hmm.
optimize ourselves so much that we into paralysis, and it's
Yeah.
that's not useful either. And so I feel like just do, if you want to have a morning routine, do a little thing, see how
Hmm.
it does, like, and then like evaluate. Do it for a couple of weeks. Does this feel good? Do I like doing this? Do I feel like maybe I want to have more going on? And if
Yeah.
that's and you can also have the answer like, no, this feels good and I don't want to do more. Well, it's good to have a to-do list. It's also good to have a not to-do list and be like, I can't do all the things. So there are things
Hmm.
I'm not going to do.
Hmm.
Like, like, okay, meditation is a super good habit to have, but there is no way I'm going to move it into my calendar right now. It's going to go onto my not to do list. That's fine. One of the only episodes I've written so far this year has been about it's okay to give up your New Year's resolutions. Because, like, yeah, these things are good for you, but
Yeah.
not if it's costing you your mental health to try and maintain them.
Yeah. Don't you find though? I think this speaks to the optimization thing as well. Is we're very good at even starting small and then going, oh wow, I just succeeded at this small thing. Therefore, I'm going to incorporate my entire day into this because
Yeah.
I've seen success in this little thing. We can put such perfectionistic, massive expectations on ourselves, and which is I don't know where I was going with that, but
Yeah.
I see this a lot, and especially like with morning routine type stuff and evening routine type stuff. But if we're not debilitated, then there's maybe no need.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So like I have this written on my note here because I was like, oh, I want to work on something. So I'm just going to, and then I was like thinking like, ooh, I'm getting in too deep. So I'm just going to write what was in my head. It, in general terms, was the amazing plan to turn everything negative in my life around and have fun while doing it and never get stressed out from the process. And
Oh
I was
wow.
like, I just wrote that down because I'm like, that's not realistic. Like, and
Sounds
writing it down,
fun.
I'm like, okay, yeah, if I write this down as the title, then I know that's what's in my head. Like, because it's like I want to do all these things, I want to do this, and it's not
Mhm.
going to happen, especially with everything going on in the world right now. Like, there's too much. Like, while I want to make good changes for myself, I need to be realistic for what I am capable of, what I will stick with,
Mm.
because yeah, we can get into that trap of like, I'm going to make all these plans that I'm not going to follow through with. But at the time, it really feels like I'm going to.
Yeah. You know, I what this is kind of making me think of here is that a routine is a thing that could be necessary, or let's say beneficial,
Mhm.
if there's an aspect of your life or our lives that is somewhat debilitated, or maybe I'm finding that I don't have any energy at all during the day. And a solution to that would be to do like 20 minutes of walking in the morning or getting my heart rate up or whatever the doctor's trying to tell me I have to do. So then spawns the idea of a routine of, well, getting in the routine of waking up and getting the heart rate going could help the alleviate the debilitating part of your life.
Yeah.
But if you're finding yourself going through an entire day and there's nothing debilitating you, there's no problems. If our ADHD is managed, if our for as good enough, right, or managed enough,
Mhm.
then what is there to do? What is there to be done? It just doesn't seem like in that case, we wouldn't need a routine.
Yeah. Well, so what I often like to think about, and what I tried to mention earlier too, is this idea of scaffolding my day. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
is, I'm building this very basic structure of how my day is going to go, and then fitting things in where they can go based on how I'm feeling that day. Personally, I do very poorly with the like never miss a day mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is, while I'm good at it most of the time, once something happens, I will never have the motivation again. Like, I remember probably a decade ago doing Duolingo and being like, oh yeah, I have this like year and a half streak going. And they had a server error and one of my days didn't count. And I never did it again.
Oh no.
They even like, they fixed it like 2 days later, like, oh yeah, we were restored your streak. I didn't care. Motivation gone. That was one where it's like, oh, it was such a low barrier to entry. And I mean,
Mhm.
I don't remember anything I learned in that thing.
You don't
But
remember the language that you were learning?
no, I don't even
For
know remember which one I was
gay.
doing. I was probably doing Spanish or Japanese, and I don't remember which one. I mean, it's
Okay.
probably because I know enough to like get by, and so it's like, well, I did something, and so I was like, oh, but yeah, when like for much smaller things, like, oh, I've done this great for a week, and then I missed a day, and then I don't feel like doing it again. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so this particular tool is not a good tool for me.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I know it's a great tool for a lot of people, and they can be like, oh yeah, I can
Mm-hmm.
they have the motivation to get back up on the horse once they mess up. I'm like, yeah, that's not there for me. And I do think that's also a good point about tools in general, is that like, just because something works for someone doesn't mean it works for
Mm-hmm.
everyone. And for certain things, I'm sure I'll probably pick up the never miss a day or daisy chain or whatever method
Mm-hmm.
again, because I think they're it's good for certain things, but
Mm-hmm.
for most habit things for me, it's not the way I need to go, even though I'm like, get an ad on Facebook for like, be like this habit tracker. I'm like, ooh, that looks really cool. I want that.
Yes.
I'm like, no, I'm like,
Yes. Oh my God, so much. Like a huge part of our community, I might have told you about this, is the daily accountability. It's that thing that you're talking about. And it's a split, right?
Mhm.
Some people are all about it, and some people are like, it's a demotivator. I personally like the idea
Mhm.
of learning from the demotivators, right?
Mhm.
So it'd be like if that's what I would push back on. I would just be like, now I'm curious. And so just for me, it's about so then what does it take to get going back? Or like what would it take to get you back on Duolingo? That's where I dork out on that stuff.
Mhm.
But going solo on habit tracky stuff, I fail at every time. It has to be I have a buddy that I go walking with. I have to have some kind of accountability buddy, or I'm like, it won't
Mhm.
happen.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just yeah, it's a really the scaffolding, seeing making it be a possibility in my day, and then working on lowering the resistance to doing the thing I want to do as much as possible. Like if I want to drink more water, okay, well then I just need to always have water nearby that I can just drink, and it's like I will just do that. It's like if I want to eat more vegetables, have more fresh vegetables in my house. If I want to go on a walk more, make it so that I have it's easy to go on walks. Like it like
Yeah.
just and then also reverse. If I want to do less of something, how can I increase the resistance? So I'm like, oh, I'm playing too many video games on my Switch or whatever. Okay, well, instead of leaving it on my desk, I'm gonna put it away, like in a drawer. And then it's like, oh, just that little extra resistance, like, oh yeah, that is enough
Yeah.
to and it's like, oh yeah, the if I like, oh, I'll keep the candy in the cold garage rather than in the warm pantry. And then it's like, well, I don't want the cold candy because it's cold. I don't want to go out to the garage. It's there, and I could have it if I really wanted it, but
I
and
love those phrases, by the way. They're like anchor comments to where if I'm finding something that I want to do, like the water, that phrase "lower the resistance"
yeah,
is a easy thing to think and then come up with a solution for in the moment. That's awesome. I pulled my email app off my phone. And now I could still check my email on my phone if I went to Safari and logged in, but there's a too much resistance. There's enough steps that I don't want to do it. I forgot the question. I had a question for you about that, about lowering the resistance. Oh yes, I would love your thoughts on this.
Mm.
I hear about this a lot with people, and I have my opinion about it, but I feel like we have this tendency to want everything to connect perfectly, and then we have permission to move forward on a thing.
Mhm.
Like we need to be able to grasp it before we move forward on it. And so much of, especially in the productivity space, or right where you're like, it's gonna be uncomfortable, things are gonna be shitty feeling, and they're not going to be interesting. Like we have interest wired brains and we want to do important things, but we're waiting for it to lock in before we act. What are your views on that? And this is just me being curious. And how do you deal with those things?
Mhm.
Like they're shitty, but you still got to do it.
First thought, what comes from borrowing another phrase, this time from Brene Brown, is to embrace the messy middle. Um,
Ah,
because I find having like something like to have in your brain, like, oh, I'm going to embrace the messy middle, like is very helpful for like when things are hard and being like, yeah, they're hard. Pretending they're not doesn't ever help me.
mhm.
And being like, oh yeah, doing the dishes is not hard, but it is hard for me to get myself to do.
Yeah,
And being like, okay,
same.
so if I acknowledging that part, like I'm in the suck, and I just
I'm in the suck. Yes.
yeah, and I'm like, okay, well, that's where I am, like or it's like you go with Nike and then you add a phrase, so it's like just do it anyway. And
Oh,
you're like, oh, okay, yeah, just do it anyway because often that is what we need, where we're just like, I don't want to do this, and you're like, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to because that's what needs to happen, or like that's what the more analytical, better version of myself wants to happen.
mhm.
I'm like, oh, I'm really tired and I don't want to make dinner. But, like I don't want to set that example for my kids that we're just going to have snack dinner all the time. because they don't like it and I don't like it. But it's okay to have occasionally, but
Mm-hmm.
I need to not make that a habit for all the time. So yeah, I'm going to just get up and I'm going to lower resistance. I'm going to make the easy dinner tonight. We're just going to have pasta and whatever. It's going to
That's awesome.
I'm just boiling water and tossing noodles in and cutting up some vegetables. It'll be fine.
Yeah. It's almost like, so what is the ADHD way to just do a thing? And even though, even though it sucks, even though we know it's awful, I'm fascinated by that stuff. Like, what does it take for a person, an ADHD person, to do a normie thing like that?
And I think just that it's so important that we acknowledge that it's like when we try to dismiss something being hard or that we don't want to do it, it makes it so much harder when we're like, well, I should want to do it. I'm like, well, I don't care that I should want to do it. I don't want to do it. And I'm going to do it anyways because it's got to happen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, that the shame that comes with that, I should be able to do this. Or like, I'm going to wait until the light flickers. I'm going to find the motivation for it, or I'm going to find the excitement for it. And I'm like, I will never, ever find the excitement for dishes. I have come to know that about myself. It is hell on earth, and I hate it.
Yeah. And it's like, it's so many cleaning tests. Nobody likes doing those. How can I make this something that, while I don't want to do, I can still bear to do? It's like, I'm going to listen to music or a podcast or, you know what? This
you're
great for cleaning.
Oh, if only people could see that.
Yeah,
he's got one of those things that. How do you describe it?
Arm extender, long grabber,
garbage picker upper thingy for the beach, or arm extender.
But yeah, it's just like a little. It's a grabber tool. That's what it's called.
A grabber tool.
Walking around my house and picking up stuff off the floor, I don't have to bend over. I can just. Makes it more interesting. Makes it easy.
I think it probably funds it up a little bit too, right?
Yeah. It definitely does.
It looks like it would be fun to play with.
But hey, you want to go pick up the backyard? And give them one of those, and they're like, yeah. And I'm like,
let's go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Like, I had remember seeing that tip online and being like, really? But I had one of these for like a garbage pickup, and I had like hurt my back, and I was like, I'm going to go use this thing to pick stuff up because I can't lean over right now. And I'm like, oh, that was so much easier. Why haven't I been doing this? And I mean, that is one of the funny things was like a lot of ADHD tools were like, I don't need that. And then it's like, well, that was way better.
Turns out
I did.
And then you'll use it for a good 5 months, and then it'll be nothing again. It'll be
well. This one has been part of my rotation. It has been. I use it so much. I got a second one for upstairs, one for downstairs.
That's awesome.
It's just as useful as it is just as important as having a broom.
Wow.
Because
I might have to go get one.
Yeah. I mean, it works because I have young kids and my dogs also like, it's great for dog toys because they like my Chewini,
your Chewini. Oh,
yeah, no. she has anxiety, and so she'll hold a little toy in her mouth while she walks around, and then she'll forget it, and so then she'll get a new one, and so then they're all over. Like, this is also happens in the yard, and they get rained on, and they're super wet. Oh, and I'm like, so the grabber is great for getting the wet ones out of the yard and throwing them in the laundry. But yeah, it's like
nice.
But yeah, so I'll have all this. Like, if you don't have a lot of stuff on your floor, probably not as useful, but it's great for picking up toys and dog toys. And
I would use it for the stuff on my bookshelves and nightstands. I clutter coffee tables. I'll clutter.
Oh, and I also it's also great for like I hang stuff up with it. Like, we'll have like little like birthday banners and stuff, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I can reach that with this. My wife's like, you're tall enough already. I'm like, yes, but this is even easier.
Like, no. But no. Click.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's fun. Well, William, I could probably just shoot the shit with you for a long time, but we are pushing to the end. And I usually have a short podcast episode, but we did a good long ramble. I appreciate you coming on the show and was like spending time.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I had a good time.
Yeah, you're fun, and so I will let people know how to find you on the in the show notes. But it's Hacking Your ADHD is your podcast. Everybody probably already knows about it. But is there other places where people reach you or connect with you or?
Yeah, so the website's hackingYourADHD.com. Now on YouTube, and so it's
Oh,
at Hacking Your ADHD.
right on.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, just had a AMA last week, so I'm going to try and do a couple of those throughout the year. So we'll have
What's
another
the
one of those.
AMA?
Just ask me anything. But yeah, so then the video of the
Okay.
AMA is on the YouTube channel. And then
Awesome.
I'm also on Blue Sky, also at Hacking Your ADHD.
Okay. You know what? Well, I'll just put all those in the show notes. So if you guys want to connect with William in those ways, go for it. And yeah, man, thanks again for coming out. Appreciate you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me.
What an awesome guy. That was such a fun talk. And yes, I did actually order the grabber reacher toy, the reachy toy, the picker upper toy. By the time you are listening to this podcast, I own it. It is in my house, and I guarantee you I'm having a great time with it. It is, or shall I say, it will be my shiny, fun, happy toy. Alistair and I are probably absolutely going to gamify it somehow. Maybe he's actually going to want to pick up. Could make chores fun. Please do yourselves a favor and head over to Hacking Your ADHD. Follow him on his socials. Follow him on all his socials. Grab his newsletter while you're at it. Oh my God, he's a fantastic scribe, writer, author. What do you author? Writer? Right. Writer sounds like a weird word at the moment. Writer. Writer. He's a guy that puts words to the page with proficiency. Seek him out. Links are in the show notes. And always, you guys, I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will talk to you later.